you.
Me?
Yeah, you. I have a riddle for you.
Let me hear it.
What is one thing that all human beings need to live? I'll give you a hint. It makes up 70% of our bodies and is found all over the planet. Does this picture help?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
You guessed right. I'm talking about water.
So if our planet is 70% water, where is it all? I know when I turn on my sink, water comes out, but where does it come from? From the ocean? From the sky?
Hang in there, buddy. I know who can answer all of our questions. Let's call our friend Dr. Pompey. He's a geographer. Do you know what a geographer studies?
I think they study our planet and the people on it.
Yes, exactly. Let's call our friend Dr. Pompey and see what he has to say about where on Earth water is.
The way I always explain the hydrologic system is the water constantly in movement. But there are moments where it's in storage, which are just these different containers, we can think of them, where water is stored, and it's constantly trying to find a way to move between these different storage containers. Some of the classical storage containers that you might be familiar with are things like lakes, rivers, oceans, but perhaps some things you haven't thought about are things like ice shelves, glaciers, trees, and our very vegetation, our human bodies ourselves, within our soil, and even in our air, even in the air that surrounds us right now, is a certain percentage of water vapor. How much fresh water is there available for use? Well, of all the storage containers that I mentioned previously, the largest one is the ocean, which stores about 97% of all water on Earth. The problem with this water in the oceans is that it's salt water and is not for human use and human consumption. Of all the water on the Earth, only 3% of it is fresh water, meaning that it can be used for humans, for drinking. And of that, almost 80% of it is locked up in ice. 20% of it is stored deep underground in aquifers that have taken thousands of years to fill up. So to redo the math for us on that, that's somewhere around 0.01% of all water on Earth is easily accessible and can sustain humans for their basic freshwater needs. All the water researchers I know are addressing water issues in two ways. There's issues with quantity and issues with quality. So quantity just means, do we have enough water to fulfill our basic needs? A lot of the problems with facing Californians right now during the Great California Drought is that, as the climate of the American West gets drier and hotter, there's a less available quantity. Okay, so we're seeing a decrease in the quantity of water, but an increase in the demand. That is an issue of quantity. How do we get the right amount of water in the right place at the right time? The other side of access to water is with quality. Worldwide, we're living in a rapidly urbanizing world that is putting increasing strain on urban water infrastructure. Worldwide, something that is most risk to children is getting waterborne diseases that come from drinking water that has not been properly sanitized. And one of the largest negative consequences of that is diarrhea, which to us might be an inconvenience for a day or two, can be deadly for children around the world. So those are the two biggest concerns of water managers, not only in California, but around the world. The quantity of water, but also the quality.
Thanks, Dr. Pompey. I never knew that such a small amount of water is drinkable.
That's why it's so important to save as much water as possible. So when you're brushing your teeth, never leave the water running. There's lots of little things you can do to save water.
I'll save every drop.
Especially if you live in a special town called Los Osos, California.
What's so special about Los Osos?
Well, let's find out. Los Osos is found on the California Central Coast. It is centrally located between Los Angeles and San Francisco. But there's more to Los Osos than meets the eye. If you travel deep under the town, you'll find a special area called an aquifer. What's an aquifer, you ask? Well, let's break down the word. Aqua is Latin for water. So that can tell us that aquifer has something to do with water. An aquifer is a special layer of underground rock and dirt that holds fresh water. This fresh water is held in place by a bottom layer called a confining layer, and that layer doesn't let the water leak out. When I first learned about aquifers, I pictured it like an underground river, but unfortunately, that's not really what they look like. Picture a cup of dirt that is filled to the brim with water. That is more realistic to what an aquifer actually looks like. So how does the water get down there? Slowly over time, rainwater drips into the aquifer. It takes a very long time for enough water to drip down and fill up the aquifer. So when there's less rainfall, that means there's less groundwater in the aquifer. Did I mention this is where Los Osos gets all of its water from? People are able to get this water to the surface through holes dug in the ground called water wells. Humans have been using water wells for almost 12,000 years. Of course, over time, people have created increasingly specialized systems to get water to many people. During the 1970s, the Los Osos population grew very quickly, so the small town had to rethink how to get clean water to everyone. The three biggest issues facing Los Osos water supply are overusage, contamination, and seawater intrusion. After much debate, a decision has been made to help resolve these troublesome problems. Let's call in an engineer to tell us more about the solution.
Who are we calling this time?
He's an engineer who is helping to build the new sewer system and the new wastewater treatment facility.
Cool!
I think an engineer takes this knowledge of math and science, this underlying knowledge, and builds a bridge between what's in your head of math and science and what can actually be built or made. The path to taking something from an idea to actually have it finished and on the ground or in the ground is full of potholes and problems. The engineer's job is to solve them one at a time, day to day, until the project is done. Sometimes people think of engineers as, the quiet nerd that sits in the cubicle and doesn't talk to anybody, but it's really not that. The engineer has a very active role in talking to people and helping the average person understand what these projects mean, why they're important, how much they cost, what are the different options, and help the community make a choice. So what's going on in Los Osos with the new sewer system and wastewater treatment facility? To someone who doesn't know a lot about wastewater treatment, it's sort of something you don't think about. You flush, you take your shower, and you just don't even think about it. Wastewater, by its very nature, has a lot of things that are a problem for the environment. So in the community of Los Osos, that was built on a big sand dune, thousands of people living without any way to treat their wastewater. They all have what's called a septic system on each individual lot, which is basically putting your wastewater back in the ground, similar to how we did it hundreds of years ago. Over time, what happened is one of the chemicals that comes out of the human body, nitrogen, ended up in our water out there and made a good part of that water undrinkable. It was decided years ago that we needed to have a sewer system, which really includes a bunch of pipes that collect the water from every home and takes the water to a location where it can be treated. It sounds simple, sounds really simple, but in Los Osos it's been very, very complicated and caused a lot of people to become upset because, number one, it's very expensive to put all those new pipes in, and number two, these places where you treat the human waste, nobody seems to want them close to their house. And so there was a lot of fighting in Los Osos for many, many years. And so they finally decided that they'd put it at a location outside of town. And really the idea is to take all that wastewater, clean it up to the point where it's no longer waste. Now it's recycled water. Now it's something that we can use to irrigate schools, to irrigate crops, and use it as something that benefits people, not something that they just try to get rid of. When we first turn that sewer system on next year, 600,000 to 700,000 gallons a day would get treated and disinfected and basically made ready to reuse on crops, on turf. So that's really how it works.